Did somebody say win totals? And immediately I went to Google. Ohio State. We were talking about this a couple weeks ago, weren't we? 10.5 minus 150 on the over, plus 120 on the under. Who's playing what?
I'd take over on that. And I saw that Michigan's 9.5, and I would play under on that.
I already have.
Yeah, I need to
under.
I need to fund my account so I can make that bet is what I probably need to do.
I mean, I'm not retiring on the bet that I made there, but I put something just to have it in there. I had some money in FanDuel or one of them. I don't know. And, the Ohio State one, it's so easy here in February and March to sit there and say 12-0, baby. And then you start to see maybe a couple of the little, wrinkles that are there, a little troublesome mole that you don't know what to do with, things like that. And you have to kind of go from there. But Penn State and Oregon are obviously on the road. Those are going to be two of the biggest games being circled. And then, of course, being on the wrong end of a few matchups against the team up north. I mean, how many high leverage games are there on the schedule for Ohio State? And then how does it go? I mean, I think 11-1 is probably likely. So by that, I should say sure. I'm gonna bet the over, but I don't know. I don't feel that the return on investment is great there because I don't have a lot of room for that game that doesn't go the right way.
Yeah, 30 to win 20 doesn't sound all that palatable to me, but whatever.
One of the ones that I saw that I feel kind of strongly about is Nebraska at 7.5. If they're starting a true freshman quarterback, I'll take the under on that one, just because. As we know, freshman quarterbacks will lose you at least one game that they shouldn't, and Nebraska will lose you at least 3 games that you shouldn't. So there's 4 losses already. And now
even Matt Rule couldn't solve that riddle.
So
the end of that Iowa game needs to be put in the loo. That was just
or the loo.
The Louvre, whatever. Louvre, yeah, the Louvre, the LOO, yeah.
Yeah, every year I fall victim into buying into Nebraska, and every year it bites me in the butt. I didn't buy into them last year, which
Lucy Van Pelt, the ball carrier.
Yeah, which was great. Divine Ozigbo is not walking through that door for them. So yeah, I think that the under. Maybe I need to sit there and put together a nice little under parlay with like Michigan, Nebraska, and somebody else.
Wow.
Yeah, I have yet to look at these across the board, but Nebraska is a tough one. But until they prove it, yeah, they're one of those programs that is kind of like wait and see. Show it to me one time that you can win close games, and like Tony says, Raiola is going to be the guy.
And the thing is, if he's not, is that even worse? If
another year of Heinrich Haarberg.
Yeah, exactly. And I like Matt Rule. I think he's a very, very good coach. But we've seen that one. I don't know how much better Haarberg is going to get. I think you almost have to just go through the struggles with Raiola and hope that it turns out better next year. But then you also have to assume that he's going to stick around. And at this point, I don't know that you can assume he's going to be in the same place for 2 years in a row.
With Nebraska's schedule, they play 3 teams from the East, so that's just like the old format, Ohio State, Rutgers, Indiana. Then you supplant 2 Western teams with a trip to USC and a trip to Lincoln from UCLA. So that's got to be tougher than Minnesota and Northwestern. So you've taken out Minnesota Northwestern in a typical year, the old format, and you've replaced them with USC and UCLA.
Don't know what to make of UCLA this year.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously with its change, I mean, USC is really going to be a bad matchup for Nebraska. I know that Caleb Williams has moved on, but the quarterback that they rolled out in the bowl game, the meaningless exhibition game, looked pretty okay there. I think they're going to be able to put a lot of points up, and Nebraska just isn't going to be able to get into a shooting gallery type of match and hang with anybody.
Faithful viewer Mike 3883 asked if I can find it. Basically, Ohio State does not win the national championship. Why? Why
Offensive
or
line.
if? Well, I guess if
Offensive
they
line.
lose the last game.
Why, Steve? Why?
Oh, why? Because they suck. Because they suck again in the big games like they did this past year. That's kind of the long and short of it. I mean, I can't. I mean, that to me is the lone Achilles heel. I mean, I think if there were a rash of injuries to key people, obviously, and then you didn't have people behind them step up, that would be a factor, obviously, as well. You can't even foresee something like that. But to me, if they can't line up and get 3 yards when they need to get 3 yards or pass protect worth of crap in the big games, then, and that's, at Oregon, Penn State, at Penn State, at home with Michigan, Big Ten championship, and then playoff. I mean, playoffs, that's like 5 or 6 big games right there that you're counting on these guys coming through. So where they didn't last year. So, that's the big step up for this team. And they're going to get battle tested this spring. They were battle tested last spring by this same defensive line. And it was so bad, they went out and got Josh Simmons in the portal. What's going to be the temperature of this thing after spring practice? Are Ryan Day and Chip Kelly going to look at each other and say, who's available? Let's go. Let's go get somebody. And whether it's a Boston College Aussie dude or, somebody from UCLA that Kelly coached or, whoever it may be, go get somebody that can play. Because, the 3 years of coming close, it's not good enough. And, 1 year you say, okay, shame on me. 3 years, shame on you. You got to go get the players, go buy the players you need to buy to win the national championship. It's time to quit screwing around. That's just my overall feeling on it.
I'm looking at,
Go ahead,
I'm looking at the, Ohio State used to run the ball really, really well when Justin Fields was the quarterback. They'd lead the Big Ten by a wide margin. So over the last 3 years in Big Ten games, Ohio State has hit the 200-yard rushing mark 10 times total in the last 3 years. And Justin Fields' 2 seasons at Ohio State, and one of those being a COVID-shortened season, the only time they didn't hit 200 yards rushing in a Big Ten game was the 2019 Big Ten championship game against Wisconsin. Every other time they're over 200 or 300 yards. So that's 14 regular season games in the Big Ten over those 2 seasons, just with Justin Fields. And one of those years was great with J.K. Dobbins. The 2020, they're starting out with Master Teague, and eventually he gets benched for Trey Sermon. And Trey Sermon was not fantastic that year until the Big Ten championship game, essentially. So they can do it. They've shown they can do it with a quarterback that provides a threat. And that's something that Ryan Day talked to us about a week ago or whenever it was, that you can't win that last game, or in order to win that last game, you need to run the ball. And when he says that last game, he's talking about Michigan. And it's not something they've been able to do. And the results are not tricky. The lack of running has hurt them. So just getting that threat back, and they have 5 guys now who can provide that threat. They want to get back to that. Chip Kelly has run his quarterbacks here and there. 100 carries a year is about what you should expect from that quarterback. That's including sacks. So just that threat slows the defense down a little bit. And if it doesn't slow them down, then the quarterback takes off for 17 yards. And now, if you don't want to worry about the quarterback run, then Ohio State will go ahead and take those chunks that way, or do some RPO stuff and things like that. But I think they will run the ball better this year, regardless of the offensive line. I do think the offensive line is better than it was a year ago at this point. There's no debating that one. And I also don't think you can judge this offensive line based on what we saw against Missouri because it's not the same offensive line. So I think it's good enough to win it all. And so what won't get it done? Just Ohio State has terrible bounces against really good teams, terrible calls against really good teams, terrible just unforced errors against really good teams. So just have the ball bounce your way for a change. And I think that could be the difference. Whether it's a 50-yard field goal or it's not, or it's a replay official not buzzing down to overturn a fumble return for a touchdown, or buzzing down to call a targeting that the refs didn't call. Something, just don't have that happen. And I think that could be the difference.
I'll go quickly through a couple of things, and I agree with everything that both Tony and Steve have said. I think if the handoff of offensive play calling to Chip Kelly isn't complete and final and everything else, that you could see a muddied spot where they're conflicting signals, that could create some issues. I think that Ohio State is obviously trying to make changes in how it handles special teams with the departure of Parker Fleming. Special teams fall into that bad bounces, bad break type of situation. And then lastly is it's all about matchups, and there might be a matchup out there of somebody that just does everything that Ohio State does poorly. And that's that's like the biggest and I guess maybe the most obvious bugaboo is, just a bad matchup. And it's way too early to know who might be a bad matchup. I don't think we know where the weak points in Ohio State's armor may be per se in 24, but there could be a team that just is not to Ohio State's liking, and they could face them, and that could knock a season off its marks.
Absolutely. Kevin, what is going on there at Buckeye Huddle and with you this week?
Yeah, I am in my 3-day-a-week podcasting schedule. As the dog is squeaking a toy next to me, I'm going to record something as soon as I jump off of this. I think that I may do a live show on Thursday. And then I am on the road over the weekend, hitting a couple of camps. We'll have lots of recruiting coverage over at BuckeyeHuddle.com, as well as on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. So look for a lot of recruiting stuff to come up here over the next several days.